We have restored this saw so that it can be used. It's in good condition now, but it doesn't have sharp teeth and it doesn't have any set. All right, we're going to talk about saw sharpening today. There are two types of teeth basically with saws. One is a crosscut tooth, and that is a tooth that's more advantageous to cutting across the grain like this. The grain runs this way, and we're going to cut across. Those teeth are filed with sort of a knife edge on them so that they will cut these fibers instead of tearing them out, because you're going across the natural run of the grain, and it will rip fibers out if you don't cut that line first as you're coming across. Those teeth are more complicated to file, but they're not hard to file. It just takes some getting used to. But for our purposes, there are two schools of thought when it comes to joinery saws. I'm going to give you mine, and then I'm going to give you the one we're going to use for this course. And the reason that we're not using mine is because with my way of sawing, of using saws, you need more than one saw, joinery saw. But there's a school of thought that says that you should have joinery saws that will cross cut and do what's called a rip cut, which means you're ripping down the grain along with the grain of a piece of wood. Okay? Most joinery cuts are going to involve more cross cut than rip. And I prefer a crosscut saw and a rip cut saw, each dedicated to whichever type of cut I'm going to be using. It makes more sense to me. But there's a school of thought, and hand tool woodworkers have debated this probably for as long as they've been doing the work, that says, and it's true, that if you have a small enough tooth to a joinery saw, you can cut really cleanly with a rip cut across a grain, particularly if you use a knife line. Paul Sellers is an advocate of this technique. It works really well. Okay? And because you don't need anything but one type of tooth configuration, it works really good for beginner woodworkers. And so what I'm going to show you today is how to file a rip cut tooth in a saw line. It's the very simplest geometry for saw teeth and the very simplest to file. And what I would say to you is, as you grow as a woodworker, when you get opportunity, try a crosscut joinery saw and see if the difference to you is worth it. If it is, get you a crosscut saw to go with a rip cut. If it's not, then get you then just use your rip cut. So let's look at the rip cut tooth pattern. And the thing of it is you want a saw with 12 teeth per inch or better, all the way up to 15 or 16 teeth per inch. If you get much past that, you can't see the teeth really well to file them. So let's go down here. What this is a makeshift saw vise. I use this for all my saws. My big hand saws, the big long ones, this is what I use for it, but we're going to use this for this saw plate. And all it is two pieces of wood that I can take this. I've got a bolt in the end so that they're together. And I can take this saw. I have a cutout for the handle here. And I can take this saw plate, slide it in here just like this. Put it in my vise. Adjust the teeth where I want them. You want this as low in this vise as you can so that the teeth are as supported as they possibly can be when you start to file on them. So take a little bit of time to get it how you want it. Tighten it down real tight. This is a saw file. It's a triangular file. And the thing with it is you want a saw file that is appropriate to the teeth that you're filing. And what you want is you want to be able to put this in the gullet and have at least half of one side. That, in other words, the teeth should only come halfway up this side, so that you have 6 sides that you can use to file teeth. It makes the saw file last longer. When we look at the geometry of this tooth, when you place this file in this tooth, you've got it almost straight up and down. That's going to be the rake angle of the front of the tooth. The teeth are either going to be pitched forward or they're going to be pitched back. With a rip saw, they are pitched almost straight up and down. I know some people do absolutely straight up and down. I tend to drop back just a little bit. With a crosscut saw, it can be as much as that. Although I would want to tilt forward just a hair, even with a crosscut saw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the back tooth. Okay. And I'm not going to lay it straight. I'm going to tilt it back just a couple of degrees. The reason for it is that if I keep it absolutely straight up and down, then what I'm going to end up with is an incredibly aggressive saw. But I want to do something first because there's something I want to show you. I want to come here, and the very first about inch of the saw, I'm going to mark the teeth there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to about the 3-inch mark, and I'm going to mark it there. And there's a reason for this. One of the wonderful things about Western hand saws is I can file the tooth myself. And I can file it in a particular way that will allow me to change the pitch of this saw along its length to make it easier for me to use or give me different results than what you would normally get. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to place this file in this tooth line, and that's straight up and down. But I'm going to tilt it back just a degree or so. And I'm actually filing the back side of the tooth in front. I'm going to go with 2. Now they make jigs that will allow me to repeat this angle. I do this by eye. It's not difficult to do by eye. And I'm doing the same stroke, the same number of times in each gullet. I'm going to keep that angle. And the thing of it is when you go to file a saw, you can look at the rake angle. You can set your file in here and match the rake angle of this tooth line if you want to. And you can see the polished edge. And I'm just filing straight across. Okay? That's all that I'm doing. There's nothing complicated. I don't like the way that sounded, so I'm going to hit it a third time. There's nothing complicated about this type of sharpening. That's why whip saws lend themselves to beginners, because you can sharpen your saw yourself. But we're straight across. I'm keeping that rake angle consistent as best I can. It's not super critical. If you deviate a little bit, it's not going to hurt anything. Didn't like the sound of that. And what I do, I've got my finger here so that I know that angle is locked in. That rake angle is locked in with my finger. All right, I've reached my 3-inch mark that I made. Remember, I made a 1-inch mark and a 3-inch mark on this saw. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tilt this back another couple of degrees. And I'm going to go to the 1-inch mark. The reason for this is that it will make the saw cut smoother initially in the cut before you reach these really aggressive teeth back here, back there. Alright, I'm reaching the 1-inch mark. I'm going to tilt it back just a little bit more. The reason for that is it will help the saw to start in the cut. You won't have as much trouble with it digging in or trying to skip on you. There's a tooth here. And what I'm actually going to do with that tooth, first I'm going to check. That feels pretty good. And then what I'm going to do with this tooth, I'm going to tilt this up like this. I'm just basically going to get rid of this first tooth because it's nothing but trouble. Okay, so that's the saw sharpening. Now my guess is this saw is going to bind when I go to cut with it. I think it'll go so far and then it'll bind because I don't think there's enough set in this saw. But let's see. Yeah, see? See how it's binding? We sharpened this saw to a rip cut. But the saw doesn't have any set. And what that is when you look down the tooth line, each of these teeth will be bent one way or the other. One will be bent this way, the next one will be bent that way, the next one that way, always opposite of one another. What that does is it makes these teeth wider than the plate is. So that when I go to cut through wood, the wood doesn't close up on the plate and keep me from cutting. I tried to cut and it was jamming in the plate was jamming in the wood. That's because there is no set on this saw. Now there are a few ways you can set saw teeth. They make saw sets, but the saw sets they make nowadays really don't do well with small teeth. I have a saw set that would set these teeth, but I prefer to set saw teeth with a hammer and a punch. Okay? It's just my preferred way. I don't have to mess around with finding a saw set. I don't have to mess around with anything. I can just set the teeth and go. Now, I've got this so the handle and the spine is off of this piece of wood so that this plate sits flat. I have a punch. Now I prefer to use like a nail punch that doesn't have this tip, but I can't find it. I'm gonna set this on the back tooth, the very last. It's like a half tooth, but I'm not gonna mess with that. I'm gonna go up to the full tooth. I'm gonna set this on that tooth. Now I'm gonna go like that. Okay. Then I'm going to skip a tooth and go like that. Same amount of stroke. Try to be as consistent as I can with the blow that I'm delivering. And I'm just skipping teeth all along this saw plate. And this piece of wood will give you don't want to hit it really hard. The last thing you want to do is snap off a tooth. So you're not placing this at the tip, you're placing this on the body of the tooth. Center of the tooth. And you notice I'm doing everything I can to use the same amount of force. Everything the same. And I'm just going to go along, skip a tooth. I'm doing this to every other tooth. And I missed that. All right. This does not take very long. Not very difficult. On the body of the tooth, not on the tip. Every other tooth. every now and then, every few sharpenings, you're going to end up having to reset your teeth. But you could be thankful that as amateurs that are not running a professional shop and not running a saw every day, 8 hours a day, you don't have to sharpen them anywhere near as often. And so a set will last in a saw for quite a long time for people like us. Alright, this side has set. So what I want to do now, I want to flip back over on this side. Remember, I started at the first full tooth, so at the second full tooth, I'm going to repeat. I'm going to skip a tooth, every other tooth. And we're going to go along until we finish this side, then we'll be back. All right. I can feel a set, but I'm pretty sure that's a lot more set than I want. This saw is tracking straight, but I think there's too much set in it. So what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to do is kind of clean up where I sharpen it. I'm going to take a medium India stone, and I'm going to lay it like this. I'm going to make two passes on that side. And two passes on that side. And what I'm doing with that, there may be some burrs along the edge of this from where I sharpened it that are causing the saw to cut rougher. And so because the saw is cutting rougher, it may be fooling me when it comes to how well it's cutting. So I want to give it the benefit of the doubt. When it comes to that, okay, that's not bad. I'm getting some, the back side of the cut is kind of rough. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a hammer, wear safety glasses. I'm going to place this hammer in this vise. I'm going to make sure it's in there good and tight. I'm going to take another hammer. Very light, just the weight of the hammer itself. Because I don't want to take a bunch of set out. I'm just trying to refine what I have. Just trying to refine what it is that I have. And I can hear the steel with this plate. This is a very nice steel, and it's under a lovely type of tension. I love that. Okay, what is that feeling like? Yeah, I can feel that I have lessened that set considerably. Let's see what's going on in the cut. Lovely. That's what I'm talking about. Right there. Beautiful, beautiful cut. Gorgeous. That's lovely. When I cut, you see that, all of that, but if I go like that, it kind of disappears. And you see how straight this saw is cutting? Fantastic. All right, now what I want to do, I'm going to run a stone on both sides of this again. It's probably wrong, but we're going to try it and see. This time, I'm going to run a fine black Arkansas stone. Along these teeth, because what I'm trying to do is make sure there's no kind of burr that's causing any issues on that back side. But that's lovely. Let's try it again. Yeah, that'll work. That'll do the job. I got a splinter in my finger. That's what happens when you're woodworking. But that's lovely. It's cutting straight. Let's see what a cross cut with this looks like. And if you notice, the saw is starting really easy. Lovely. That will do. Cross cut and rip. Just fine. And so now this saw would do all of my joinery needs without any issues. One thing that I would say though, you saw that this saw was tracking straight. Alright? Now if this wasn't tracking straight, you'd have to tune the saw. I have a video that I will link in the bottom of this, in the description, or in the first comment. I'll pin that comment, something like that. But there will be a video on saw tuning. You need to look at that, review that video, so that if you need to do something like this to an existing saw that you have, not a reclaimed, restored one, your saws are going to go dull. You're going to sharpen them. As you sharpen them, you're going to change the set. You're going to change the way the saw works, and sooner or later you're going to run into a problem where the saw's not tracking. You need to know how to sharpen the saw, how to set the saw, and how to tune the saw to run straight and true. But that right there, that's all it takes. Yes, it can be a lot of work, but if you don't have any money, I paid $1 for this saw. This saw will do everything any of the expensive ones will do. It'll do it well, because I have the knowledge to make it do that. And I'm giving that knowledge to you. Bless you, and I'll talk to you later.